Hello everyone, my name is László Szabó. I'm director of REC and I will be making the initial kick of this workshop. Actually, thank you very much for coming to our Energy Future seminar, and thank you very much for the participants, for the panelists and the presenters to be here. It's really a pleasure to welcome you all on board. Unfortunately, still it's an online mode. But let's hope that sooner or later we are going to the in-person meeting back, and then we can continue our work as it was before. I would like to start slowly just to give time for more participants to arrive to the workshop. So I will make a short introduction to the Energy Futures seminar workshops in REC, and then we'll get into the subject to the batteries, because that's our subject now. Energy Futures workshop. REC is trying to make these workshops very interesting, and we try to make it concentrating on some future technologies or aspects or practices which can be very interesting for the energy sector, being in the power sector, in the gas markets, or in other energy intensive sectors, which can be really making a transformation even more base than we have seen before. We had last year 2 of these seminars, and this year we'll try to catch up and we'll try to increase the number of these seminars as well. And we decided to go for this workshop, and our topic is batteries. And batteries is a very wide concept. And what we really focus on is actually we are focused on the solutions for energy storages, and we are focused on the e-mobility as well. And the setup actually will be the following. That first we have 2 presenters. Diego Pavia, CEO of the InnoEnergy, is already here. Hello, welcome you on board, Diego. And we have Péter Kaderják from the ZKK Zero Carbon Center as well. And then the 2 presenters will actually introduce us to the 2 sides of the coin. Actually, how Europe sees the future of batteries, what is the future and what is the role of Europe in this whole process. And Peter will help us to get more knowledge and more insight to the Hungarian strategy. What is the strategy of the Hungarian Battery Association and the companies who are here in Hungary? How do they see the future of their operation? What are their vision for the next coming years? And then we'll see that what type of future will be in this aspect. And I think, and I see Peter arrived as well, which is very nice. All the panelists and the presenters are here. And maybe just one very basic thought about the battery and the future of battery in Hungary and in Europe as well. Because we see the potential in battery storage, like we have seen in the photovoltaic technology some 10 years ago, that we see that it's there already. We see it in every day. And we see at the same time that the costs of the battery storage is really decreasing rapidly. The big question is how long we can see this decrease of battery storage in the future, whether it will really make the breakthrough, because if it will continue to do that for quite many years, then we really see a really transforming energy system, because that batteries will help really to integrate more renewables in the system, integrate other sectors, integrate transport sector, housing, and even prosumers in the system in a more flexible way. So that's actually a big challenge which we are looking for. And the program for today that we will start with Diego Pavia from InnoEnergy. Maybe just a few words about Diego, because maybe not everyone knows him. Diego is the CEO of InnoEnergy, which it's quite difficult to classify, but I think InnoEnergy is an alliance maker. which means that you are building up programs and platforms where you bring together industry participants, policymakers, and then you are helping the process to build up a common understanding and a common platform for the future development of very specific sectors. And the two most important one probably is EBA, the European Battery Association, and the other is the European Green Hydrogen Acceleration Center. With this introduction, maybe you can extend this introduction if you wish so. But with this, I would like to leave the floor to Diego. The floor is yours. You have some 15 to 20 minutes for presentation, and after that, Peter will be the next one. So please, Leo, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Szabo. And just to complement while the presentation pops in the screen, what energy is and why we got the mandate from the European Commission to lead the European Battery Alliance. So in energy, what we do is that we identify early stage innovations in sustainable energy, and we invest and support them so they become industrial giants. So since 2010, we've invested in 450 of those innovations, all of them industrial and capex intensive, 150 write-offs and 300 going strong. And when we got to the mandate from the Commission in 2017 to animate and to lead the European Battery Alliance, why did we get it? Because at the time we had already like 30 plus investments in storage and batteries. So when Europe had to decide whether we had a chance as Europeans to fight against the Asians in the battery world, then we came to somebody that already put the skin on the game and invested in batteries. Again, batteries all across the value chain, from mining to recycling. So the journey started in September 2017, when Vice President Zetkovic launched the European Battery Alliance, and he gave us the mandate. And today I would like to share with the audience 6 slides, 3 of the progress done so far in the last 4 years, and 3 slides on what still needs to be done to keep on being a winner in this evolution. So if I can have the first slide, please. So you see here, and remember what I just said, so we started in 2017. You see here the penetration of the new car sold that are electric vehicles, either because they are full electric, so battery electric vehicles, or plug-in hybrids vehicles. You see that in 2021, out of 100 cars, 21 cars sold in Europe were electrical, whereas in China only 15, and in the US only 4%. So that's extremely good news. I must say it's one of the many consequences of the European Battery Alliance, but also of all the industrial regulators, financial institutions that have been able to pull the rabbit out of the hat. But that's very good news for Europe, because we have been able to react in no time compared to China, that had all the muscle to create batteries back in 2017. And you see that the numbers, but we have been able to mobilize a full value chain end to end, and today we are overtaking in terms of percentage. Of course, in terms of number of cars, because there are many more Chinese than Europeans, that it's a bit less than in China, but in terms of percentage of new cars sold, Europe is ahead of the pack. That is extremely good news, not only because of environmental reasons, but also because we're setting the rules of the game in terms of infrastructure, in terms of mining, in terms of active materials, in terms of recycling. And that's something that we should all be proud of. And that's one of the consequences of the European battery value chain. Again, keep this chart in mind, because that's the result of 4 years of hard work of all of us. Then the next slide, please. So how this perspire into us Europeans in terms of jobs and growth and economic industrial activity. Here you have the map the slide that I like most in all my pictures. That is the number of industrial projects that are today, we have not put everything, that are today either committed and in operation or committed for the future. So it's 110 industrial projects that they have mobilized 125 billion euros of investments in Europe. And as you can see, they're pretty much in all the countries. You see that Hungary is also have got many of the bubbles of the projects there, because you are one of the early movers. But the best news is that these projects, industrial, that are driving jobs and growth across all the value chain. That is the upper part of the slide. It goes from mining, and yes, we are redoing mining in Europe to extract the lithium and manganese in Czechia, and graphite in north of Sweden, and a bit of nickel in Finland, up to recycling. I can already share good news for the audience. We have been able to produce the first industrial cell 100% recycled materials. I repeat, we Europeans have been able to industrially produce a battery, a cell of a battery, that is made out of 100% recycled materials. That is like 4 years ahead of what we are planning when we launched the whole thing. So again, 110, that is driving growth and jobs. Next slide, please. And how have we been able to do this? It's by creating an ecosystem of the ones believing in this, to capture this demand, this new market, that, by the way, is our own market, because the ones buying the EVs is us Europeans. What Zabo said in the beginning about storage for being able to store the renewables energy while the sun is not shining, or for when the wind is not blowing, is still a market that is growing, but still not big. The one that is driving the whole batteries uptake is to the EVs. And you see in the slides a color code that is in blue, all the industrial players that are in the ecosystem that we have been building over the last 4 years. In orange is a research and university, because we need innovation for the upcoming processes to keep on being ahead of the pack. And green is the financial institutions, because for all this that I just described, we need a lot of money. It's not about subsidies, it's not about the public money, it's about private money. And with the private money, the 125 billion that I just described has come and has been deployed, is because there is business, which is good news. So the objective of all of us is, and we are in the path and even ahead of schedule, is to create by 2025, what you see on the right side of the screen, a new GDP in Europe that is 250 billion euros. Just for the audience to understand what is the size of this per year, is the size of the Danish economy. So we are putting a new Danish economy year in, year out in Europe, that is this battery value chain, which is extremely good news. And that represents around 3 to 4 million jobs, both direct and indirect. So when I pitch those messages, the best is that it's not about technology, it's not about going from thermal to electric vehicles, is creating added value jobs and added value growth in Europe. And there has been a perfect match between European institutions, European countries, industry, research, financial institutions. So it's been really a joint endeavor. So Europe has its best. Okay, so that's the past. Let's not be complacent. This is what has happened. So we can congratulate ourselves, but we cannot just rest on the good results. So what needs to be done still in the future? We go to the next slide, please. So what this slide depicts is, again, the value chain from raw materials to recycling. And in the mimic of the batteries, the symbol of the batteries, what is in green, the already in operation, already in online industries that are delivering either raw materials or active materials or cells, the green part of the battery, of the cell. Then in orange, what is committed and being erected, and the blue, what is still missing. So for the ambitions and for the needs that we have in Europe, that, as you know, Europe is concentrating the biggest car manufacturers in the world. For you to know, there are 100 million cars manufactured and sold every year. So we still need the blue parts of the cells to be filled. They still to deploy new industrial projects to be able to feed the demand that we have as Europeans. And you have in a horizontal, also with a cell symbol, two horizontal things that are not about industrial, that is about talent, skills, so people that will operate those industrial sites that we're erecting, and also the citizen, that the citizen will accept that we start mining, we start refining of mines in Europe. That's something that we have not done for many, many years. So I'm gonna concentrate the next 2 slides on the 2 red stars, the raw materials So mining and upgrading of what we mine on the ground, and the skills. And you see in the round bubbles, number seven, and then in the right to the bottom part, 2.23, is the time that you need in years for deciding on a mine and having the first active material to be able to be used by a cell manufacturer. So just for the audience, you need 7 years. If today, 2022, February, the 22nd of February 2022, we decide to go for a mine, we'll only have the raw materials at the right grade for a cell to be manufactured in 2029. So that means that A is not about decision, it's also about implementation, and that takes a lot of time. The same with skills. Today, we need 800,000 out of the 3-4 million by 2025, and this will require 2-3 years to upgrade the skills and competences of those white and blue collars to be able to operate the industrial sites. So this is where I would like to spend my last 5 minutes on those 2 slides. So next one, please. One less. You went too far. Yeah. So on the raw materials, so 4 key messages for the audience that what needs to be done between now and 2025. First is the batteries regulation. The regulation is, if you have to retain 3 words of the regulation that today is being discussed between the Commission, the European Parliament, and the Member States, the 3 key words of the European battery regulation is sustainability, traceability, and recyclability, meaning that all the batteries that will be sold in Europe, no matter where they are manufactured, they have to be sustainable. So the CO2 footprint has to be minimal. The labor, the child labor should be completely out of how the battery is sold, blah, blah. Sustainable, traceable, that anything that comes into the battery, we can understand from the cradle to the grave what has been inputted in the cell, and recyclable or circular, that from 2027 onwards, 50% of any new battery that will be sold in Europe has to have 50%, 50, of recycled content. So those 3 key words are putting Europe like 5 years ahead of China or the US, and we're leading the pack worldwide in terms of what is the battery world. The second bullet point that I would like you to draw your attention upon is that in the upstream, the famous mining and upgrading of raw materials, we need a bit more of risk money. And that is what they call the EBA Green Fund. So today, the banks, the EIB, they're a bit shaky and afraid and risk averse to invest in mining. So there we have a gap to fill. The third is that recycling, I already touched upon this. Recycling, we are like 4 years ahead of the pack, of the plan. That already today we have an industrial cell done industrially with 100% recycled materials. That's extremely good news, because that means that the end of life of batteries, as well as the scrap that is created while you do a cell, can be reused industrially. It's not a lab thing, it's industrial. And finally, the fourth point is recycling will see more end of life earlier than expected. You will not be surprised if you, as a buyer of an EV, you will be offered by your OEM, your car manufacturer, that they will come, they will replace your battery with a new battery, and still the car will be yours. And why so? Because today you maybe take 20 minutes to refill your battery. Well, today, as far as innovation is concerned, we're close to 5 minutes. It's still not industrial, but you will be able the next 2 years to do the fill of your battery in 5 minutes. But for this, you will get an offer from the OEM that you have to put your battery back into recycle to create a new battery with those additional performances. Okay, so that's the first gap that we have to fill. And then my last slide, next please, is about skills. Again, we have to upskill and reskill 800,000 white and blue collars for operate all those industrial sites. And that's in no time a huge volume that the European system, both education and professional learning, is not prepared for. So we have launched the EBA Battery Academy just to address the volume in almost no time problem. And already we have signed with 3 countries, France on the left, Spain and Hungary. You see here your Minister of Innovation, and that we signed end of November last year to deploy this, with the ambition to train 40,000 Hungarians for being able to accommodate competent skills to the battery needs. So that's for me the second gap that we as Europeans we need to address for making the current success everlasting success. Final slide. And so any questions that comes after this meeting, so there you have the contact points with the mails and the phone numbers for any question or concern you might have about what we touched upon. So Slavo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diego, for your very interesting keynote. I think we myself learned a lot from this presentation, and you were very perfect on the timing as well. So that's really nice of you, and you will participate in the panel as well. So if there are questions, then you will be here. And I see already Péter Kaderják here with us. Hello, Peter. And your task after Diego is to show that what is the Hungarian vision in this field of batteries. We see that we are advancing as rapidly as Europe, and we would like to see how the vision and the strategy is seen at the association as well as in the ministry, because you are both there at the both end of the pipeline. So the floor is yours, Peter. Please go ahead with your presentation, and then we are here to listen.
Right. Thank you very much, Laci, and it is my great pleasure to be here, ladies and gentlemen, at this joint webinar organized by REC and Zero Carbon Hub, which I'm also heading here at the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. My job is to provide you with a summary on the role batteries can play in, let's say, reaching Hungary's decarbonization goals. So I would just like to start with a statement and reminding you that Hungary, also as part of the EU, but also as an independent nation, committed itself to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. As you know, this is also put into national law, and by the end of last year, the government put together, created, discussed, and also passed a long-term strategy, climate and energy strategy called the National Clean Development Strategy, which discusses different scenarios how Hungary could reach climate neutrality by 2050, which is, as you know, a very ambitious goal for the globe, including, of course, Hungary. Now, a big question for Hungary, I think, is that beyond the climate benefits that we will obviously get from making this happen also in Hungary, what other benefits Hungary could get from investing into that green transition? What jobs could we gain from this transition? What technologies I would call post-fossil fuel technologies we could master in the meantime, where innovation and research could provide high value added coming from Hungary in this whole transition. I think these are the additional questions to the climate benefits that could come from 2050. And in this regard, I think the battery industry question is a critical area, and I will try to explain why this is so, and what is the vision of partly the government, which I don't work now at the moment. So I'm now at the Zero Carbon Hub at the university, and also managing director for the Hungarian Battery Association. So we could start with the first slide. which just describes the agenda, I would say, the green economic development agenda that comes out of the long-term clean development plan of Hungary. The first row indicating the key areas for action where you can win this battle to make a green transition. Number one area for action is electrification and electricity sector decarbonization. Personally, I think this is really the heart of the program, because once you have clean electricity, you can use this partly to decarbonize heating by replacing natural gas, and also to electrify transportation through e-mobility. The second area for major action is greening the transportation sector, then developing the market for energy efficiency, and promoting renewables, key solutions other than green electricity-based solutions. Now, if you look at the second row, those are those key technologies that we think will and already support this transition. One of them, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen economy. We discussed a lot about that, but the battery and the battery value chain is definitely seems to be one of the key supporting technologies to help that transition to happen. And this is why I think a huge emphasis in the country is put on bringing investment into country in this area, and also to create a separate government strategy to promote the development of the battery value chain. So let's move on, please. Now, as I mentioned, number one flagship for decarbonization in the country is the decarbonization of the electricity sector. And here I just listed the major components of this program. The overall objective is to reach almost full carbon-free electricity generation by 2030, and then up to 2050. In this regard, we are moving on. Just for 2021, the most recent figure by the Hungarian Energy Office was that in 2021 about 63.5% of electricity generated in the country was already free of carbon emissions, mostly coming from nuclear, but in a accelerating speed from renewable electricity generation. But part of the program is nuclear capacity renewal, lignite phase out, a massive renewable electricity portfolio build up based mostly on photovoltaics, plus gas-based generation to provide primary backup and grid modernization of the sector. We can move on, and this is just to illustrate that we are already experiencing an investment boom in photovoltaics in the country. There's an exponential growth of both commercial and household size installations in the country now, coming very close to 3 gigawatts of installed capacity. And this adds a lot to zero carbon electricity generation growth in the country. And also compared to nuclear, the share of solar in providing carbon-free electricity is growing fast. Now there are more than 120,000 household size generation units installed into the system, and is fast growing, really supported by government programs as well. And as we move on to the next slide, what we see today is this close to 3 gigawatt of photovoltaic capacity built into the system. But according to national strategies, By 2030, we should move close to 6 gigawatts, 2040, 12 gigawatts, and by 2050, even 80 gigawatt numbers you can find in government strategic documents, which is very ambitious, very attractive, but you cannot do that without finding solutions for storage, especially seasonal storage in this regard, and employing massive e-mobility programs and solar-based heating programs in the country. And of course, a big question that you always get, okay, we do this, but how can you keep system security, and how can you get economic value added and green jobs out of this process? I think it's critical to get solid answers to those questions. Now we can move on and look at the trend in electromobility, where we also see this exponential growth in the country. Of course, not at the scale that we saw on Diego's figures for Europe, but we see that even during the darkest COVID times, the sales of both battery electric and hybrid cars in this country has been skyrocketing indeed, while the sales of traditional passenger cars were decreasing. So overall, the share of electric vehicles in new sales is up to 5% already, and there's an expectation that this trend is also continuing. We can move on, please. And those two trends illustrate that both in electricity sector reform and transition and e-mobility or in the mobility sector, batteries are key to support that transition. Even I took this picture from the most recent third energy outlook of the International Energy Agency, the net zero scenario of them looking up to 2050, where they illustrate how the trend and the market share of key energy technologies might change over the coming 3 decades. The gray columns indicating the share of the oil industry in new investments from now up to 2050, and with the colored columns indicating the share of zero carbon led technologies, yellow indicating the share of batteries in new capex investment. So you can read this as that perhaps if the net zero scenario comes as the one over the globe, then batteries might become really the new oil industry in these coming 3 decades. So it's worth to look at, and it's worth to investigate to what extent Hungary can gain from this major transition of key energy technologies. Please move on. And now, if we come close to Hungary, we can already conclude that that with the current situation, we are indeed in the fast movers, if you wish, in battery industry build up. Currently, Hungary has the largest battery cell production capacity in Europe, to my best understanding, and since 2016, FDI, foreign direct investment in the battery production, reached over 5 billion euros and created 14,000 new jobs in the country. Current cell production is up to over 25 gigawatt hour per year in the country, but this whole move is driven by Southeast Asian investors, Far East investors, Samsung SDI and SK Innovation, and their partner companies are investing heavily in the country. Now, also, if we look at the European outlook, we see that EU cell production capacity is might be up to 500 gigawatt hours by 2025, which could be a tenfold increase in a few years So you can't identify too many industries with such fast growth potential. So this is why Hungary should use its relatively good current position to further strengthen this and further develop this fast developing industry in the country. If we move on, we also can get a picture or a map on what sort of battery industry related activities already we have in the country. If you look at the value chain, you will see that we already have major activities along the value chain, from raw materials to cell production, up to applications in the transportation sector and also in the electricity sector. In this regard, comparing to 3 years ago situation when we had zero electricity storage investments in the country, today we already have 20 megawatts of electric storage, on-site storage capacities installed into the electricity system. And on the e-mobility side, world-class car producers in the country already decided to transform themselves towards electromobility at different speeds. But this means that for example, in the electromobility sector, we have a potential to combine world-class automotive industry with a world-class battery industry, which could become a real success story if the country can utilize this situation well. We can move on and emphasize that this is why the government just at around the end of last year passed a new industry development strategy, which is called the Battery Industry Development Strategy 2030, and put forward 6 major objectives in this strategy. First, promoting the sustainability of the sector, as explained by Diego. The second is to create a competitive value chain in this battery industry. So we don't want to become like an assembling country in this regard, but would like to have an innovative, lively, integrated battery ecosystem in the country with very strong Hungarian R&D capacity, skilled workforce. To this webinar, I just arrived from a meeting at between the rector of BME and Samsung SDI, entering into an MOU for joining efforts and forces to train engineers for the fast developing Hungarian battery industry. But I think the agreement between the ITM and Energy on promoting EBA to provide massive battery industry related training is another example that we need that very much. Of course, we understand the need for speeding up to find the critical raw materials and recycling needs in this area, and also the Hungarian battery industry should be integrated in the European one. So these are the major 6 objectives of the government strategy. And we can move on, and I just want to add that the strategy also points to some major projects, priority projects, like lithium extraction potential from domestic thermal water resources, also on recycling capabilities of batteries in Hungary, and also to promote participation of batteries in electricity grid balancing and battery development in e-mobility. Now, parallel to the creation of this government strategy, also an industry association was formed. And if we move on, I would just like to maybe close with providing a few information on the Hungarian Battery Association, which this morning approved the work program of the association for 2022 for this year. It has 45 founder institutions, including the largest producers and users and players of the Hungarian battery value chain, representing 4,000 billion Hungarian forints of net revenue by 2020, and which now will start professional operation from early next week, with the main objectives to represent industry, help to develop the value chain in a country and also within the EU, and supporting the implementation of that government strategy, which where the explicit objective is to further promote this industry. And we can move on, please. This association around the end of last year already produced a document responding to the request of the Ministry of Innovation and Technology, being responsible for implementing the battery strategy. We collected, by the help of the working groups of the association, a list of projects that we offered and promoted towards the ministry, so that these projects should support value chain development in battery industry. Also, that included a proposal to create so-called competence centers to be set up by main market segments in the country regarding e-mobility, electricity storage, and batteries with lower than 2 kilowatt-hours capacity, which is a specific market segment, being very strong in Hungary. Also, this proposal supported integration into multinational value chains, with a special focus on supporting Hungarian SMEs. And on the next slide, which is the last slide I would like to show you, is a very brief summary of on the aggregate of the projects we proposed. The Hungarian Battery Alliance proposed to the ministry, which included establishing these competence centers, just to make Hungarian battery industry players to be recognizable indeed on the international scene. We also proposed horizontal programs like education, creating testing centers, establishing a health occupational health and safety program, also one promoting competitiveness in a horizontal sense in the industry. On our list, the lithium from geothermal water also was mentioned. Not to talk about battery reuse and recycling, where we and the association sees a huge potential in the country. Money-wise, the largest group of projects that we proposed and collected was related to battery applications in the electricity sector, for both households and larger users, to provide electricity market flexibility and to integrate renewables. And finally, some specific batteries development proposals for e-mobility solutions also were put on that list. So now we submitted this proposal to the ministry and will be in continuous discussion with people there how to move ahead these proposals, which really came from and were motivated by industry participants representing the Hungarian battery industry. So all in all, my conclusion is that yes, the battery industry is a key technology. Yes, Hungary has a good starting point at the moment. We already have a strategy. We already have an industry association. So I think we have a lot of an opportunity here to create an industrial success story. The big question mark is how good we are at this and how can we integrate huge giga investors from Asia with Hungarian SMEs to create a balanced industrial sector here. So with this I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your presentation. I think it was a very, very interesting one with lots of information included in this. And I like both the presentation because they were really, really dynamic one, and at least you showed good examples of Europe and Hungary on those areas where we can really be proud of with the development, what we have seen in the last years. And I also would like to thank you for the questions which you raised in the last part of your presentation, Peter, because it's a nice move forward to the panel, because we have a nice panel discussion now, which will be led by Balázs Fersman, my colleague from REG, and I just give the floor to him, who will introduce the panel participants as well.
Thank you, László, and I would like to ask our distinguished panelists to switch on their cameras. And I think that we will have an excellent and very, very colorful panel, also from national background, also from industrial background as well. So thanks a lot for all of you to accept our invitations and be the panelists of this discussion. Practically, as László began in his remarks at the beginning of this webinar, he mentioned that, however, there are lots of potential usage or use cases of batteries. Today we will focus on two areas. One is the transition of the energy sector, and the other is the transition of the transportation sector. So practically, from the industrial side, we composed our panel to represent both sectors, also the mobility and the energy sector. However, we also have the researcher side. And thanks, Peter, for you. And I think that I hope that Diego also will join us, because he also promised me that he will with us in the panel discussion. So practically our two keynote speakers also will participate in the panel discussion. Before we begin the first round of the questions, I like to ask also our attendees that if you have any question to the panel, please use the chat. I try to follow this chat while I manage the moderation of this panel. So if we got an interesting question, maybe we try to somehow to answer it in our panel discussion. So before beginning the roundtable, I would like to ask our new panelists. Peter, I think you will agree that you will be skipped from this first round as we heard your keynote speech, but I would like to ask our new keynote speakers for a very short introduction that please tell some words about your background, the institution or organization you represent for, and your point here in this panel discussion. Please, Micha, let's begin this first round.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michał Mrozkowiak. I'm representing Jagiellonian University and Jagiellonian Institute. We are working on energy market report, renewable energy report, and also all areas of energy efficiency systems, especially on the level of national policy. So rather, as you said, we are from different parts, from different areas, and my part is rather this national point of view, and I'm glad to help with my knowledge.
Thank you very much, and I think that all of us will be very, very interesting to hear your points here and try to read this discussion a bit more international and not focus not only the local things, but examples from other countries as well. So let's continue with Szabolcs. Szabolcs Balogh.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Szabolcs Balogh. I am the managing director of MVM Mobility. MVM Mobility is owned by the MVM Group. Is the state-owned electricity and so energy company in Hungary. And either in the last 2 years we grew like a little holding. It's not literally a holding, but for alternative mobility services we are providing within the MVM Group, and we have MVM Mobility, eMobi Limited, and Mobility Volánbusz Ltd as well. Last year we established this company. It's a joint venture with Volánbusz, which is focusing on not only so we are focusing not only on the public e-charging and home charging, but either on the buses, e-buses, and the public transportation as well. And we are providing solutions and services not only on the field of e-mobility, but on CNG as well. But today it will be more about e-mobility. And I'm responsible for the e-mobility activity of our companies as a managing director.
Thank you. It's a very wide range of portfolio that you have mentioned. This is really practically the whole ecosystem of the transportation, including the onboard part and also the charging part. So thanks a lot. Roland, let's continue with you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Roland-Deme. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the potential that I can have my opinions about the batteries and the e-mobility as well. As part of the Hungarian group, we are responsible for the virtual power plant activities here in Hungary. And as you may know, Elmű used to implement and introduce one of the first batteries here in Hungary, which is the 8 megawatt batteries in Sorokshár. And we introduced this to our VPP and supplying secondary and primary reserve towards the Hungarian TSO.
So you in your group, of course, there are excellent daily operational knowledge about management of stationary storages and how to use the storages in the
yes.
energy sector balancing. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you're right. And parallelly, I am responsible for the business development for B2B customers. And as a manner, this is a very interesting task as well, because all of our B2B customers and partners are seeking for batteries and solutions for sustainable future.
Thanks a lot. And last but not least, Pál, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Péter Kaderják, and I'm representing Med Group. Used to be a traditional trading, power and gas trading company, but today we also have our flexible asset division, and within this division, we are responsible with my colleagues for the portfolio management of our generation assets in Hungary, of our CCGT assets in Hungary, and our team is also responsible for the first pilot battery project of Med Group, which will be a 4 megawatt, almost 4 megawatt, 8 megawatt hours unit to be commissioned in the second half of this year in Szászhalombatta.
Thanks a lot, and I think that your company's transition is also demonstrates this new views of the companies that you begin your business from the gas trading sector, and now you invested your money into battery storage. It's really the industrial transition, demonstrates the industrial transition. It seems that unfortunately we lost Diego. Therefore, I can't ask him, but I'd like to begin our roundtable with a sentence from the European Battery Alliance homepage, when they declared their goal, and we have heard it from Diego's presentation as well, that to build a strong pan-European battery industry to capture a new market worth 250 billion euro in year 2025. Practically, it's a huge business. So 250 billion euro 3 years from now. And I would be very, very interested how do you see the progress of this program? Do you think that this is a flagship figure, or is it a realistic program to achieve that huge amount of commercial income of the battery sector in the very close years? So I think that first I'd like to give the floor to our industrial representatives, because I think that you have your own viewpoints that okay, in my segment, is it a reality to catch quickly new businesses in the battery sector? So how do you see these figures, and which are the most promising segments of the development of the battery ecosystem? Who can begin? Paul, now let's begin with you. You were the last in the last round.
Yes. Maybe it's worth to mention that that our company is focusing on the industrial or utility scale use cases and usage of the battery technologies, and we are mainly focusing on commercially viable and commercially mature technologies. And among these, we have also selected the lithium technology as a flagship of this trend, which I have already mentioned. And I think that based on my recent experience, that the European companies are usually participating on the integration part of the available technologies. So when we are talking and thinking about an installation of a utility scale battery energy storage system, these integrators are providing EPC or equipment supply, main equipment supply into our projects. And these integrators who are existing on the European market are rather purchasing non-European technologies, I would say. So the battery cells, based on our experience, the majority of the battery cells are from Chinese manufacturers, and where we have some comparative advantage and where the European suppliers are competitive is rather the power conversion system or the inverters and the integration of these systems. So the battery management systems and energy management, those highly added into the value chain where R&D and the developed European can play a part. So I think this is the current status, and I think it's important to understand the role of the European economy and the European Union in this progress, which can be, as mentioned earlier by Peter, the R&D segment of this development and transition.
Yeah, thanks, Pat, for this very important remarks, and I think that we will go back to these messages, where are the potential highest added value in this ecosystem, and which are the points where we need to concentrate on from local point of view or from European point of view. But hi Diego, it's great to see that you came back. Practically our first round began with a sentence from your homepage about achieving this 250 billion euro business in a very short period. So my first question to the panelists were what they think about the reality of this short-term development, and which are the most promising fields when they feel that it is a so-called low-hanging fruit, or when the batteries are close to be competitive to other solutions. So let's continue the round. Szabolcs, please try to show us what do you think as promising points or
Sure. What I see from my perspective, right, the mobility perspective, like basically I would divide into two parts. It's like the vehicles. I think in the vehicles it's now very competitive. Okay, there are lots of incentives and policies, right, in the EU, how they support the e-mobility. And what we can see now, and the lighter is the vehicle, is the better now, or more competitive, right? So the micro-mobility, like rollers or bikes or scooters, I think it's not a question, right, anymore. So it's like, it's really can use without any doubt these battery technologies and the EVs. Light passenger vehicles, cars, still there is a support, right? But now it's getting more and more competitive with the fuel, with the gasoline technologies, so the traditional technologies. And as we are going to still lots of work we have ahead when we are moving toward the heavy duty vehicles, still some R&D and some technology development is needed there. But unfortunately, in this part, I think there's a very good progress, right? But from the infrastructure part, like the chargers, unfortunately, I cannot see the breakthroughs so far. So there are lots of barriers at the moment. What I see from Hungary and practically, and I think later on I can explain what barriers we can see here. But at the moment, unfortunately, although we are at Mobility, we are the biggest CPO in Hungary, but still we don't have one charger which would be integrated together with the battery. We are very eager to do so, but there are some barriers that we have to break down.
Well, many thanks for these remarks, and yeah, I really like to go back to this part of your comments, whether is it an industry in a phase when the standardization is the key, or it's still some competing solutions? So don't forget this, and let's go back to this. But I think that as a first, let's go through this round. And Roland, I think that your company have demonstrated that you believe in batteries, as you have mentioned, that the first industrial storage have been financed by your company in Hungary, and it's still working in frequency regulation part. Do you see any other elements of the energy sector when you think that the batteries can be competitive soon, or are competitive now?
Yes, I can. As a part of the ION group, there is a distributed system operator as well here in Hungary, 3 power DSOs and 2 gas DSOs. And as a kind of pilot project, there is a possibility to develop, let's say, network integrated assets. And the DSO partners try to implement and develop one battery at Zanko and another one in Duzsa, I think, which are very small assets, but these assets are trying to support the, let's say, frequency reserve market and somehow equalize the local needs of the distribution system operator. And I think this is one of the possible solutions here in Hungary. So this is a kind of niche market because none of the other countries could implement so-called network integrated solutions.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, I think that this is 2 sub-segments in the energy sector now. The first is the balancing market. The second is this frequency control by the DSOs or by other industrial players. So the next question, of course, what have been presented by our keynote speakers, that whether this, like in Péter graphs, there were a dilemma of the coexistence of different type of energy producers, and whether this peak shaving or daily arbitrage opportunity will be an additional commercialization of the batteries later. But it's very important what you have mentioned. And now, Mika, how do you see the situation, maybe from Polish point of view, or what do you think? What are the most promising segments of the market?
I think that in the Polish situations, such opportunities generally connected with legal changes. As for now, we have problems with outdated regulatory policy, market design. There's no economical motives to invest in energy storage systems. But we are waiting for the changes in this area. From July 2024, even the smallest PV installations, renewable energy installations, will be built in hourly interval. For now, we have a net metering system, or rather, I would say net billing system, and billing interval is a monthly or even quarterly, and there's no motivation for investing in energy storage systems. When we have a system when we are calculating the price hour by hour, there will be a big impulse for this market to rise. But in Polish situation, the big problem is still the price of the energy storage systems. When I looked at the current prices in Poland for household storage systems with a capacity of about 10 kilowatt per hour, it's around 6,000 euro. It's a lot for Polish consumers. And when I look at the how much money Polish people have in pocket, it's too much for them to buy such systems. So I think a very big promising segment is local energy communities. I think that a storage system with a size of 2 or 3 containers, enough to power one village or small urban district, could be a future in Polish situation. And I also hear there are many interests from capital investors. So there will be money for such projects that can be used by local individuals and local communities. So in my opinion, the community system, local energy communities, is the most promising part of energy system in Poland, and also for storage system.
Thank you very much. And Peter and Diego, I don't want to ask you about whether you believe or not in the quick increase of the batteries, because you have demonstrated in your keynote speeches, but I'd like to ask you that, do you agree with these remarks that you have heard now, or can you put some additional segments? And do you think that there will be a robust increase in the upcoming years in the usage of accumulators, batteries? So Peter first. Any other area that we did not hear yet, and you think that, wow, it can be the
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I think it's happening. So it's not just plans for the future, but it's happening. If you travel on M2 and travel close to the good plant of Samsung SDI in Hungary, you will see that by day it's larger and larger and larger. Maybe it's too large, but it's really happening. And I think if we just talk about Samsung, they started their current activity back in 2018, and every year they doubled their production at that site, and they plan to do so in the coming few years as well. So they plan to increase the capacity of the good size, I think 5 or 6 folds in the coming 3-4 years. Why? Because I guess they see a huge market for their products, and they have long-term contracts with those buyers who sell and produce e-cars, electric cars. And now this will also be a cluster of those companies. I'm talking about the Hungarian case. And if you look around in the countries, I think you see very fast developing clusters of battery industry at other regions. I can mention SK Innovation in Komárom, and also now they are fast developing their site at Ivancsa, which will be as large as good soon. Why? Because they have a market to sell their products to, and they want to come close to that market. And the third big cluster I would like to mention is Debrecen. And Debrecen will be a very interesting case, I think, because BMW, being a huge automotive producer, already decided to produce electric cars there and electric motors. And now the battery industry suppliers are moving there into their industrial park. We heard about the news that first ever cathode producing company will invest more than 200 billion foreign soon in that area. And I heard about rumors that cell production will also be there now. Their suppliers will be there. So not even in Hungary, but at certain locations in the country, this development is becoming very fast, and so I think this is mostly motivated by the e-mobility sector change and international trends. But I also agree that we see now a take off, but I expect a very fast penetration also in the electricity sector installations. As I mentioned, 3 years ago we had 0 projects. Now we have a sizable park already, and we already heard plans from Pali, from MED. Now we have a pilot program, HMK size, household size, RRF program promoting batteries at small scale, even when there is no economic rationale for that, to tell the truth, because still the grid is providing the storage for households, but maybe from 2 years now it will be different. So, but there is also an experimentation with household size units soon that we can draw conclusions. In electromobility, I also would mention the green bus program. Now there is a policy to replace diesel buses with electric buses in large cities. So we will gain a lot of experience from that sector. Szabolcs already mentioned heavy duty applications, which is absolutely not as apparent as light vehicles applications, but the green bus program will provide also a case for experimentation, and also maybe a new program that is now under design to use modernization fund money to support electricity sector storage investments to increase the flexibility of the electricity sector, will be a help at least to further promote projects that are maybe not fully bring a full business case, but this support might bring them also to the market. So we have a lot of programs, and so I see I don't know whether the 200 billion Diego will answer that question, but is realistic. But at least in the Hungarian context, I see this is happening, and the changes is really rapid.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, Diego, I think that you will answer that yes, it is realistic, this 250 billion, but I'd like to ask 2 questions related to this. Szabolcs Balogh have mentioned these imbalances, but he feels, or not only he, but we feel in case of the electromobility that there is some imbalances, that there is a huge progress in the onboard part of the industry, but on the other side, on the charging part, there are some tasks to manage. And how do you see it from European perspective? This would be my first question. And Peter mentioned this as a good example, these clusters in Hungary. My other question to you is that how do you see the prerequisites of the good cooperation between the different type of stakeholders in that project-driven alliance, as you have mentioned, or you have defined your own alliance, that this is a project-driven association or alliance of different stakeholders. So how do you see that? What are the prerequisites to successfully manage this network of different type of stakeholders, industrial stakeholders, academics, governments. So what is the secret behind? So the first question is a very concrete question about the e-mobility, the charging and the onboard, the development. And the second is this, what is the secret of managing a network of so complex backgrounded
players? Thank you. So I will send to the organizers, and you can send to the audience the latest and greatest of what is the charging, the public charging infrastructure out there in Europe, in per country, okay, and what is the evolution. And again, you see hockey sticks in terms of deployment everywhere, but that's on the public side. On the household side, you see, for example, that the penetration of EVs in Sweden is one of the highest. I think that 1 of every 2 cars is EV. But the public infrastructure is almost non-existing, meaning that it also depends on how people live in the different countries. So in Sweden, people charge in their own home or in their own apartment, so they don't need this huge public infrastructure. So we cannot address the problem one size fits all, because again, each country is different in terms of where you can charge, because again, you fuse at home, blah blah, the whole thing. So I will send again the information to the audience, because it's very telling that the 2 countries with the highest penetration of EVs has almost no public charging network deployed. How come? Are the cities stupid? No, it's because they are able to charge in their own places, by whatever reason, because they live in semi-detached house, whatever, but they can. So I think I'm not worried at all about this. Why? Because the capex related to this is very small, very small. And in many of the countries that we have today, is pretty much a good grid that can accommodate, if you ask me. But again, and that's not full answer to Slavoj. But again, I will not be worried. And I would say, on the second question, the management of this alliance with those 700 parties, and parties, industry, financial institutions, regulators, research guys, universities. When people want to join the alliance, they ask me, how much do you pay for joining? I said 0. What is the governance? I said, well, there is no governance. There are no working groups. It's just very organic alliance where the boss is objective. So we don't have a governing board. We don't have layers of who is the manager of who. 0. Why? Because we are all chasing to create a bigger pie for Europe. And until 2026, 2037, will not compete, because the pie will be ever growing and still will be pie to be eaten. By 26, 27, there will be consolidation. And then people will have to be the best place to consolidate the others. But until then, guys, is a free ride. They still have got 4 or 5 years to capture the pie that we have all created. And that's why it's so easy to manage the alliance, because basically, at the end of the day, there's still a bit of cake that nobody has eaten. So there are no fights. Everybody is working and contributing, and that's the good spirit of the European Alliance to create the big pie. Still, there are not fights. In 4 years' time, they will, but so far, so good.
Well, many thanks for these remarks, and because it's the good opening point to my next question. Because I feel that, yes, I think partly you fully have right that this is a growing pie. Therefore, it's against all the competition. It's much more for the cooperation or for the parallel solutions. But I also see in some cases when some players of the market try to build up their own ecosystem in parallel with the others. And what do you think, and this question for all the industrial participants of the panel, that do you see of a potential fragmentation of the market, or you think that these powers, industrial powers of the cooperation will be stronger, and there will be solutions that you can use on large scale in the whole ecosystem? So how do you see from your industrial special points the potential threats of the fragmentation of the market?
So a quick answer from my side. Over the last 4 years, I've seen 0 fragmentation, even though there have been a lot of alliances in each country and even in some regions in Europe, in Germany, blah, blah, happening. And why? Because fragmentation always happens on the demand side. And today you see that the big volumes are on the OEMers. So when you have in front of you a Volkswagen that requires maybe 100 gigas per year, And basically, whatever fragmentation is upstream, it's again repacked by the demand that is setting the standard specifications, price points, and so on. So as long as the automotive passenger segment is the biggest consumer, then fragmentation will not exist because it will be aggregated by the demand. On the utility side, you have behind the meters and on the grid. On the grid, then utilities are coupled to the generation. Then again, utilities, we don't need to have zillions. You have very few, and they're talking to each other every day. So there also you have on demand side pretty much homogenization of the market Behind the meter, that's for me still a big question mark. And just to complement what Joseph Paul was saying before, today behind the meter requires a different chemistry. That's very important to understand. Today, Europe is betting on high energy densities that have got a downside that, hey, maybe they could be a bit safer, if I can use the word. And you've got all the safety things that in the car that makes that 100% safe. But when you want to install a battery in your home, then you want a stupid LFP that you know that even if you just hammer it, nothing will happen. And LFP, yeah, there are not many guys doing LFP. So now you see why, because hey, there's so huge market in automotive, in high nickel energy or manganese energy density. That why should I put my research and production in LFP? So I see that the behind the meter market will take a bit of delay, if you ask me, about the fragmentation.
Thank you. Our participants, do you agree with this approach, or do you see some different strategies of industrial players in your segment when you feel that they try to build their own business against of the common pie, as Diego mentioned, common big pie? Okay, that's if all of you agree that now everybody is interested in the growing pie, so this is not that period when there is a strong competition between the industry players. It's good to hear, I think, because yeah, and I agree with you, Diego, that of course, as the hockey stick, there will be a changing period of this market, maybe 3-4 years from now, but now it's all of the stakeholders are committed to increase this pie against all the alternative solutions.
Yeah, and only one information, only one line information, because the audience is listening that hey, there is a huge demand side and blah blah. Then they would expect the audience that the costs are going down, and they are, but the price is also going down. Well, no, the cost is going down, the price is going up. The cost is going down, the price is going up.
Thanks. This is an important comment on this phase, that don't believe in price cutting in the sector. And what do you think? What is the reason behind, other than the inflation?
Well, there is a lack of supply for the excess of demand. So we are learning like hell in being efficient in production. But why should you undercut yourself if there is more demand that you can supply? It's a pure market.
Thank you. Peter, you have mentioned these clusters and the importance of defining clusters and supporting together these different stakeholders for the same direction. Of course, it's a very, very interesting, I think, from Hungarian perspective or from Central European perspective, how we can participate on a with a relative high added value proportion in that global value chain. So I would like to ask you, mainly our guests from the industries, that how do you see, where do you see the potential to increase the local added value to this global story? So let's begin with Szabolcs now. That you mentioned this complex approach of the transportation transition. So where do you see the opportunities to increase the local added value to this global value chain?
Yeah, I think in the mobility sector, it's like, yeah, we have to differentiate between different areas, I think. One is the depots, like for buses, right, and the heavy-duty vehicles in the future. I think there will be a role for batteries for sure. And we have to, of course, cooperate with the electricity system, right? Because there is always shortage, and in the future, shortage will be even higher, I guess. Homes, of course, later on, especially homes where there are PVs installed. These are the other part of where I think batteries will have an important role. Workplace, where charger, we have the workplace chargers, not the public ones. I'm pretty much that this segment is there will be a very important role of batteries as well, and the public charging, of course, in the future, but not at the moment. And what we need for this, like good economic reasons, the positive business model, which we are still looking for, right? All segments, I think, at the moment, because the cost, still the cost or price, whatever we call that, the batteries are still, from business point of view, is we cannot really accept that. And from other, there is another barrier, but later on I feel this barrier as well, I guess.
Yeah, my last round will be that where do you see the most important barriers? So now let's concentrate on the positive part. So where do you see the innovation potential? And in the last round, we will show the other side of the mirror.
So basically from mobility, these four, I believe these four parts of mobility where we can see a very significant role of batteries in the future, and all of them, of course, will have a very important role to cooperate with the DSOs, right, and then to provide the opportunity not to have a huge or immense development cost, so we can really avoid that, and even we can fit this new world to the existing old electricity system somehow. So I know this will be very important. But in the meantime, we will need the positive business case, right? So we have to work on it.
Thank you. Mika, what about the Polish situation? Do you see some progress on thinking on that, how to increase the local players in this value chain? Which segments do you believe that it can be a successful?
In Polish terms, I think the most promising area is area of recycling and reusing the storage system, the batteries. I think about the experience of our companies and our knowledge. And Diego told during the presentations about the educations, about the white and blue collar workers, that we need competition, that we need knowledge. And when I look at the situation in Poland, we have a knowledge in areas how to reuse these systems, but we need a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn in terms of producing, manufacturing, innovation systems. So when we think about the value chain, I think the smaller companies, middle-sized companies can work with big companies to add own experience in these chains, especially in the later part of installing, reusing, recycling this system.
Thank you. Paul?
I think I would add two areas where we can innovate and there is room to improve. The first one is the supply sector. I think we still need to implement an environment, an industrial environment where we can design large systems, large battery systems, how we can integrate them into the electricity sector, and also the second part for the utilization period, the operation and the maintenance of these equipments that is still missing. And I think there could be a great potential for Hungarian companies. The other point I would mention is basically the market for demand. So the electricity sector itself is in a transitional period. We have many effects from the regulation towards to the decarbonization trends, and the market players who would like to invest, so for example ourselves, have to calculate with very uncertain market environment, and have to plan the business cases for a pure merchant operation, where there is no fixed revenue, no fixed revenues, and everything in the nearby is changing rapidly. So I would say these 2 points where we can achieve some innovation and improvement.
Thank you very much, Roland. What is your view on this potential innovative parts of the?
So the question is how we can boost this part, kind of potential.
Exactly, and mainly the local delivery is the question.
Yeah,
that how we
I would
to this story.
I would split the market to 3 parts. The first one is the B2B part, where I think there is an ongoing need for batteries. For example, we have an uninterruptible solutions for B2B customers. There is a need for it, and I think there is a market for it as well. But if I checking the B2C segment, and out of the game, we take out of the game the RRF subsidy, which is roughly a kind of gift for the households, where you can get batteries, you can get heat pumps and PVs. I think there is no need for batteries at the moment, till the let's say netting possibilities end. And after 2024, I think there is going to be a real need for B2B sector as well, for introducing battery solutions as a kind of market-based solution. And for B2M, I think the subsidy is ongoing nowadays. A lot of energy communities and similar things are subsidized at the moment, and all the municipalities are thinking out how they can gain from these potential subsidies. So I think for B2B is a real situation, but for B2C and municipalities, it could be the game of the future.
Yeah, and as some of you, I think, Peter, also you have mentioned that it's sometimes on that part of the market we can't use the simple economic rationality behind of the decisions. So sometimes the emotional decisions also need to take into consideration, I think. So yeah, I agree that this is a bit more about the future than the current, but maybe, as Diego mentioned, that it's extremely quick movement or quickly growing sectors. So maybe in a year or two, it's also be on the table as a new business opportunity. Before asking you about the barriers, but so much let's speak a bit about the potential breaks of the progress. I'd like to share with Peter a question, because we got a question in the chat that the question was that is it supported by HUBA, the Hungarian Battery Alliance, the idea of combination of the metal auctions with usage of batteries at the new solar power plant? So what is your point on this? Do you think this is a good idea to combine these two approaches? I know that, of course, now you are not representative from the ministry, so it's not the charge to decide on whether is it a supportive idea or not. But now, from the battery perspective, what do you think about the potential combination of the new tenders with usage of batteries in the plant, in the power plant?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question, and I would just like to confirm that it is my personal opinion, maybe what I can share with you. But of course, when we made a proposal to the ministry on where to apply maybe storage solutions when further decarbonizing the electricity sector. This question, of course, came to the table. As I see today, as you have seen, we in the last 3 years we have seen a quite fast growth of photovoltaic penetration in the country, and at the moment it seems that it is mostly system security arguments and concerns that might slow down that process. So the system operator and the DSOs, the network companies, are those companies that come up with the complaints that if this is going on, then we are in a trouble, and they usually argue that we need more capability to regulate the system, and that new PVs and new weather-dependent production units should come online only if they have an insurance that the system regulatory problems they can themselves handle. So in this regard, I think that indeed one important area where batteries could play a role in the future in further decarbonizing the electricity sector is to combine them with new PV installations, not necessarily physically, but maybe through contracts. So I could imagine that this could even be a condition for getting a connection right to the system, that the new units should either have own batteries or contracts for or with storage providers, that in case that their operation might create a problem for the grid, then that batteries could help to manage this, so that you don't lose clean electricity. This is important because photovoltaic units can be regulated down in case of a problem, but then you just lose clean electricity. This is not why you install clean electricity generation units and photovoltaic units. So well, I would say yes, or slight yes, even though we understand that the cost of this solution might be higher than other combined solutions that could be provided by virtual power plants like ones that Roland is representing, maybe. So maybe that there could be some counter arguments from those companies based on costs. But I think if you look at the future, it should be a requirement that new weather-dependent generation units should take care themselves of not causing regulatory problems for the grid. And batteries,
as they will bear the cost of balancing, of course, it will be more and more rational from the new investor side to invest also to solutions how they can reduce the volatility of their production. So yeah, I share your point on this. This is a dilemma whether to support within the tender process or create a different market opportunity for companies who are interested in this part of the industry. But yeah, the question is on the table. I think we all can agree on that this is one of the biggest question of the intermittent renewables as their share growing in the electricity system. So we have time only for one last round, as I have promised that yes, I will ask you about the barriers, the potential barriers which can a bit slow the progress, the deployment of the batteries on the market. So how do you see these potential barriers? Which are the most riskiest? Which are the riskiest part of them? And if you have any how to reduce them. Please also put on the table. So Szabolcs, you will be the first because you have mentioned that. Let's speak about these barriers as well, please.
Yeah, I see two basically. Like number one is the business model, right? The positive business model. If positive business model is missing, then you know, if the so it cannot go forever, and the subsidies will be, there will be no more subsidy, and then the project will be there will be no new projects basically. What I believe is there will be a shortage if it's a good market, right? If there will be a shortage like from capacity, like my friends, they bought like a Tesla, right? And they added like 22 more kilowatt to their household. Today they can do it, right? And maybe it's not that expensive. But in 2 years, I'm sure, pretty sure that in Hungary, not only Hungary, everywhere, it will be either impossible to add 22 more kilowatt to your household, or it will be so expensive, and probably the business model will be there, a positive business model, because by then the battery technology will be cheaper to install a battery to your home, right? And use it, and probably market will solve it. Another one barrier, what we experienced, and I've been saying this or talking about this for like 3 years, 4 years. Now maybe, I mean, as the time is passing by, it's getting more and more important, and the solution will be more and more, I mean, the impact will be higher, of course. This is a very simple one. The measurement of DC, the current, right? Okay, we can go back in time, like 120 years, Tesla and Edison, right? Fight of Tesla and Edison. AC, DC. Edison won, right? AC. So we have the AC, right? We have all beautiful standards. How to measure AC current, right? And AC, we can measure it on a certified way. Nice, beautiful. What about DC? We can measure it very well. Like I am a physicist, right? So for each coulomb I can measure. So very, very well we can measure it, but not on a certified way. Why? Because in Hungary at least, and I believe the vast majority of the globe, there is no standard way of measuring DC. I don't know, Diego or Michal, what is your opinion or what is your knowledge about this? But for DC, the standard is missing. But on digital way, we can measure it very well. And in Hungary today, I am not able, of course, I'm representing a state-owned company, right? So I am not trying to find a gray or a tricky ways, right? No way. So we are legally very, very careful and very, very strict, right? I am not able, I'd like to, but I cannot install a charger, public charger, with a battery, because I should measure the DC, but I cannot put on the invoice, according to the legislation or the regulation, any quantity which is not measured on a certified way. And since there is no standard for DC measurement, I cannot do that. This is a small barrier, but I mean, it's you know, maybe it takes years. I don't know how long it takes, but maybe some exemption some relief we should find there. And this is a small thing. Technically, it's not a problem, but legally it's a problem, or administrative way. So there are many, and how we will face these problems, we should do this, right? And as we are doing this, we will facing what are the problems. And I know this is, it's not a big problem, but at the moment this is a pain, right? So it's okay. So this was my two. So the political business case, and second is the administrative barriers can be there. And this is here in Hungary at least. And I know everywhere in the EU this is the case. In Germany they try to do something, and there is some sort of solution for this measurement. So technically it exists, but still we have to make this exercise. Yeah.
Thanks so much for putting this story to the table, because I think that sometimes really this type of case studies illustrates well the barriers of a new solution when the big things are okay, but
the details, the small things are the problematic. So I think that Diego, you have an excellent task to check this issue on European level as well, and maybe you can react on later on as well too. But first, let's go with our industrial invited speakers. So Paul, what do you think as a potential barrier of the quicker deployment of this technology?
Before jumping to my answer, I have to confirm Szabolcs. So we had the same experience with the self-consumption of our Tesla units when we were planning the detailed design, and the self-consumption is running on a DC level, and we had to take care. We have to take a special care of the measurement of the self-consumption of the unit. So this is really exists, not only on the customer level, but on the industrial level as well. And to answer your question, Balázs, I think partially I have already done it. What I think is a barrier is the unpredictability of the market environment, and we are trying to reduce it. So we spent a lot of time and efforts to understand the future market environment, and I think what we also need to take care of is basically the benefits, the technical benefits of the battery energy storage systems. So they have high efficiency, high round-trip efficiency. They are very, very fast, and as this has been discussed earlier several times, they are emission-free. There is no carbon lag belonging to their operation. And I think what we see is that their integration and combination with a larger portfolio, as mentioned by Peter earlier, in a virtual power plant or in an aggregator platform, and so on, that is where we can monetize these benefits that are provided by the battery technologies. And this is how we can integrate them and avoid the barriers that are existing at the moment on the market.
Thank you. Roland, any additional problem that you have detected?
Yeah, as a kind of asset owner and operator for more than 4 years, last year we faced a very, very huge problem. I call it a kind of compatibility risk or compatibility problem, because, for example, when we started to retrofit our project and enlarge the capacity of the 8 megawatts, we realized that none of the inverters and none of the modules are produced by the producer. So we cannot procure it because they are out of stock, and they started to produce something more innovative and more new thing. And that's why we are pretty sure that we are struggling how to retro on or how to enlarge these sites. So I think this is a recent problem. And one of the others is just say that problem with the capacity allocation mechanism. So as Paul, you mentioned, one of the major possibility here in Hungary to build a large scale solution, but I cannot do this because I cannot join to the grid without any kind of local or DSO approvals. And I think this is a relevant problem. We should focus in somehow in the near future. And if these assets, if these batteries are supporting the balancing tasks of the DSO or the TSO, I'm pretty sure we should somehow differentiate a power plant from a battery. But at the moment, there are no rules for batteries here in Hungary.
Thank you very much. Mika, how do you see the main barriers?
Yeah, we've heard about the standardization problems and the regulatory problems, and I think it all comes to the policy problems. When I'm thinking about this problem, the question we should ask is if the batteries, energy storage systems are the solution that fits all our problems. For a short example, second biggest Polish pump storage plant has a peak power of 500 megawatts, and it's used to stabilize Polish energy systems. And it's technically achievable to create such systems with lithium-ion batteries, but I don't think it's economically worth to pursue such systems, because we have other technologies like compressed air, hydrogen, and simple and old pump storage plants. And why I'm giving this example, because I think that everyone is aware of the concept energy mix. So some kind of plant, what sources we are going to use, what kind of technologies we want to use to generate energy. And I think that we should include in national policies as a concept of storage mix or energy storage mix. So we should think about in which areas, in which circumstances, what kind of technology we want to use. They will give good examples that maybe in terms of car charging stations, we don't need battery systems because batteries are inside the car. But no one is no one's answering these questions. And when we are looking at the business models, business model is not working. So the government mostly say, okay, let's throw some money into it, make subsidies, but it's not building a market in long term. It's a short term use of money. So I think we should look at the policies. We should decide when we want to use which technology, batteries, let's say in automotives, maybe other technologies in commercial projects, in conventional energy systems. So that's the barrier we should all think about, and to go back to basics, to policies and regulatories, and to our governments, and look for the solutions in this area.
Thank you very much. And Peter, we have heard lots of barriers, and I think the good news, as you have presented, compared to the remarks of Michael, that maybe we are a bit better situation the policy level. So I think that as you have presented, that we have policy documents which clearly define the next year's major directions. And we have heard lots of barriers, including legal barriers, technical barriers. But as I remember in the discussion in the Hungary Battery Alliance, the members also have mentioned one additional barriers, and I would be interested in your view on that. This is the missing human capacity, or the educated staff or workforce, which is also a prerequisite of the successful transition. So how do you see this part, or do you see any other risks of the quick deployment of the battery sector?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question again. I listen very carefully the comments, because I think one major role for the alliance should be that it should act so that we try to change and try to remove those barriers to further development of the sector as we go ahead. So I think those questions that were raised by Roland on network capacity allocation constraints today, and regulatory problems in defining battery units should be taken by the association and investigated, and we should make proposals for the regulators to remove these barriers. Now, when I was preparing for answering this question on barriers, as I also put missing skills on my paper. So I agree very much with Diego also mentioning this. Just Samsung SDI wants to hire in the coming 3 years 4,500 engineers, new engineers at the good sites, which is, I mean, it's too much. I mean, at least for this institution, definitely, and it is only Samsung. So it seems to be there is a huge need for that. As you know, skills creation is not the fastest business. So I think there is a huge need for EBA Academy, university cooperations, very simple 1 to 2 days workshops, so all kind of trainings here. And I hope that now today the members of the association approved that we start to build up this capability within the association, responding to the needs of the members. So yes, I fully agree that this is one of a potential major constraint we have to deal with. Second is raw materials. I love very much the future vision that we use, instead of fossil fuels, solar energy or wind energy, and replace our use of oil and gas with solar energy. But you need batteries for that, and batteries are created by lithium and other very rare materials. So we replace our dependence on oil and gas with raw materials. That's very bad if you do that. So I see much potential also in value added creation, in recycling and reuse and extracting. If we really have lithium in our geothermal waters, why not to do that? So I think and also the working group on this within the association, they were very active in putting forward proposals how Hungary could revitalize its mining and secondary mining activity to provide some of the missing raw materials for the industry. I think that's another area I just wanted to mention. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And Diego, you will be the last in this round, and otherwise it's the last comment to the whole panel, because we run out the time. But I think this is well comments here that you can react on what you have heard from the other panelists, and somehow you can summarize your view on this, how we can reduce these still existing barriers to support the deployment of the battery technology. So please.
Yeah, I will try to even excite more the audience and the panel with the following. I think that the main barrier that we have as Europeans is that we don't have a systemic approach. And I give 2 examples to the audience and the panel to get excited. Today, we are sitting on innovations that will be able to charge a car in 4 minutes, 4. So that means that the DSO will have to charge 100 kilowatt hours in 4 minutes. And not only my car, but the neighbor car and blah, blah. So from the system point of view, DSOs and the grid and the substations will have a problem. They will pop up like champagne bottles. But again, that's a problem of success. So just one example that is just tomorrow, is around the corner. So the second system approach is, you have heard that today steel, fertilizers, aluminium are in the ETS, meaning that all the manufacturing sites of steel in Europe, for example, if you take steel, they have to decarbonize, and that is obliged by the regulation to deploy new renewable supply. Well, renewable, we know, PV, 4,000 hours, 3,000 hours, wind, 4,000 or 5,000 hours. So we need massive storage to feed steel at least 24/7, and you need 24/7. If you do the maths of steel, is storage worth equivalent 1,000 million cars. Again, steel is 300 terawatt hours of energy just to make steel today. We're going to electrify steel in Europe. That's a decision. It's already in the law, blah, blah. So that's going to happen in the next 8 years, 10 years. So that's because rest is intermittent, you need storage. Will it be batteries or something else? We don't know. But if that would be batteries, the storage that we need is equivalent to 1,000 million cars. That's just a number. So that's massive. But then that's industrial policy that doesn't take into account another policy. So that's what I want to bring to the audience, is that we have tremendous possibilities, but because we don't have the systemic approach to the whole thing, we're going to face tremendous challenges. That we capture them is all good news. It's all good news. But man, only for steel, 1,000 million cars equivalent of storage. So that's my final pitch.
Thanks a lot. So I think that's really the best closing remarks for a discussion about the future of the batteries in the transition process. So it's a huge opportunity for all of the industrial players and interested stakeholders who think that this can be or this will be the technology of the next decade. So unfortunately, we now need to finish this discussion. It would be great to continue for an additional 1 hour. I remained lots of questions on my list, but we planned it for 1 hour, and practically we are over our planned timing with a quarter. So many thanks for all of you to accept our invitation and to participate in this panel discussion. As in other cases, we try to summarize somehow the major thoughts of this panel discussion, and it will be available a short summary of this discussion on our website as well. So again, thanks a lot for this panel discussion. I enjoyed very much, and I hope that our attendees also enjoyed this discussion. So thanks a lot. And with this, I also finish this webinar as well. So thanks for all of our attendees to participate in our program, and let's follow our website for our upcoming events as well. Thanks a lot, and goodbye.
Bye. Have a nice evening. Bye. Goodbye.
Bye bye. Szervusztok.
Bye.